complete and amazing honor to have you here on the Holy Ground.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to go a little bit back in time and ask you about growing up, because I read that your family was very musical. And I like this image of your parents making music with your family, and you guys were in bed actually, but you sneaked down the stairs and watched them. What kind of music would they make, your family, and how did it inspire you?
Well, my parents met in college in their choir class, and so they had singing in common. My mother was a trained concert pianist, and so they'd play the classics, and they'd play things like Ray Charles and Nina Simone and Harry Belafonte. Those were all the things of their generation, you know, that they would have going in the house all the time. They actually had a really high standard of taste.
Wow.
And so from the get-go, we were pretty influenced by that whole thing. And it wasn't long before we started coming down and actually singing little songs at their cocktail parties and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just kind of naturally grew into, you know, us, or my sister and I, wanting to get in front of people. And we learned how to play guitar, and we had a little folk group for a while. And then
What age were you then?
Well, I was 13.
Okay.
And so my sister was 8.
Oh, wow. What a nice duo.
Yeah. So just like one thing just led to another, and pretty soon we were looking for ways to get in front of people.
And you had this own rendition of the Hawaiian wedding song.
Yeah. But it was as sung by Ethel Merman.
Yeah. So it had a bit of an entertainment factor.
Yeah, big time. It was kind of vaudeville, and I think kind of surreal, because here's this 8-year-old singing Ethel Merman, you know.
That's crazy.
And of course the guests had all had a few cocktails, and so it got kind of wild, you know.
Then I read that you were inspired by the Beatles, but you sort of said, we don't want to be like their girlfriends. We want to be the fucking Beatles.
That's right. Yeah. And that's a huge difference.
I know. That's crazy.
Yeah. And it just, because my sister and I were so young at that point that we didn't really identify as women yet. We were children. So to us, it was just like playing.
Okay.
And then like that kind of play just evolved into doing rock, you know.
Yeah, because I was intrigued by that, because I was thinking because I mean, that was a time where as a girl, you would rather think, okay, I want to be a girlfriend rather than actually be a Beatle. So I was surprised that you thought, no, we want to be a Beatle.
Yeah.
So it was because you're quite young.
Yeah, and my parents, I've got to give my mother her due. She never tried to force us to be girly, you know. She just said, basically, whatever you want to do, if it makes you happy, I'm behind it, you know. So I think it was an adjustment for her that 2 out of her 3 daughters went into the entertainment thing. But
yeah.
She wrote it out. It was good.
Okay. How did you did you start practicing together, and how did you get like your hands on the songs, and what were the first songs that you rehearsed together?
Yeah, well, back then you have to remember there were, nothing was digitalized. It was, we're talking about the 1960s now. And so how we'd get the music would be off of the records, or we'd walk down to the local music store and buy the sheet music, because I could read and everything. So we'd get the sheet music and figure out the chords, you know, and gradually put it together.
And what were the first songs that you practiced? Do you remember?
The first stuff we did was more folk-oriented. It was like Peter, Paul, and Mary, like Bob Dylan songs and protest songs.
Okay.
And then when we first started doing rock, it was mostly Beatles stuff. If I Fell, Yesterday, those types of classic songs.
And how did your sister know that she was more the guitar type? Did she sort of try different instruments and then sort of think, okay, this is vibing with me?
I actually got the first guitar, and then she got one, and she just zipped past me. I mean, she had a natural ability for it. And she was only 8 years old, so her hands were tiny. And she just managed to she's got this grip, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, we call one of her hands is the clamp, and the other one is called the claw.
And then, do you remember the first time that you performed heavier music together?
Yes, I do. We were given a time slot at our parents' church on Youth Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And
In church.
in church, in the sanctuary in front of the congregation. And so we chose, looking back, maybe not the best choice, but we chose to do the Doors song, When the Music's Over. And, you know, cancel my subscription to the resurrection and all that.
How did they react?
Well, what happened was half the congregation walked out.
Oh, really?
And the other half stayed. And forever after, the church was kind of split between like those who were more open-minded and with the times and those who weren't.
Okay.
And it changed the church.
That's crazy. So you had such an effect on the congregation.
Yeah, I know. It was very weird.
And how did your parents react?
They loved it. They really they patted us on the back because they
Cool.
were kind of, you know, progressive people, and
Yeah,
so
wow.
they liked to see us just up there doing it, you know, getting a big response. So
Amazing. And do you remember the first sort of rock concert that you actually went to that left an impression on you?
the first rock show I ever went to was way back when it was. I think I was about 10, and it was Chubby Checker, Dee Dee Sharp.
Oh, wow.
You know, the mashed potatoes, and
Oh.
it was like one of those stacked chitlin bills that went through. And
That must have been amazing.
yeah, my big sister took me
Oh, wow. Okay.
with her, yeah.
And did you sort of, you know, like admire them and the performance and think, okay, I want to do that. I want to go on stage and...
Yeah, I think what I admired the most was the give and take between the audience and the band.
The
It's
energy
just
exchange.
The energy, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I heard in interviews was that obviously the music industry, or males in the music industry, wanted you to look a certain way.
Yeah.
What did that do with you? Always this pressure of having to look good and like a model.
Yeah, well, you know, I could never really measure up to that. Like, I was being told that all the time, or given sort of backhanded compliments like, you sing so well, you know. But anyway, I could never really measure up to everyone's expectations of being like a model. But after a short time, I sort of just went, whatever, you know, because my drive to actually sing and play music and write music was much stronger than any transitory idea of acceptable cultural beauty, you know.
Yeah, because I was listening to this interview and you were saying you had this moment where you were at the airport and you read this review and it was really personally criticizing you and you just had to go to like the restrooms and just take a breath.
Yeah, I did because I had to face myself and go, do I really care about this? You know, is this going to knock me off my feet for the whole day or what? You know, and I just came to the conclusion that no, it was not going to. I mean, that's one person's opinion. Unfortunately, happens to be in the newspaper.
Asshole.
But, yeah.
I hope he burns in hell.
Right. Well, you know, if you live long enough and stay around long enough, it all comes home.
It does. And I was wondering, was that a turning point? Because, I mean, you were quite young, and to have that confidence to say, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about the way I look. Or was it like a process?
It was a process, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think during the 1980s, which was a time when Heart was at its most, its commercial peak, and doing the big MTV rock videos and millions of shows everywhere, I just got worn out with the struggle of it. I just came to the end of my ability to even care about it. Because the 1980s was so artificial. That was the whole point, you know, is how artificial can you look, you know? It was like theater. And it's one thing to put on a corset and fake nails and high heels and all this stuff. And for a video with stylists all around. But it's quite another to take that same look out into the heat of the summer on a stage.
Yep.
When it's like 100 degrees out and you're just about dying because you're so covered with stuff. You know? By the time the 90s rolled around, I was done. I was done with it.
Yeah,
and
because,
so was my sister.
Understandably, that pressure often leads to people with drinking a lot of alcohol or taking drugs, which is understandable because you have to be performing. All these people are putting this pressure, and there's this industry putting pressure on you to generate money for them. So how did you sort of click out of that and say, okay, I'm going down the wrong path. I need to pull the brake and change things.
Yeah, I think that my dalliances with drugs and alcohol probably were pretty tame by some people's standards, but it was enough to make me really depressed. So I finally got the word in my psyche that I was going down the wrong road, and I decided to pull back. And I was really glad I did because it felt so much better and I was so much healthier and just everything was just good, you know.
Yeah, because I was the feeling that authenticity is really like a priority for you, and being this fake person, and this must have been awful for you. So you found a way to find back to your.
That one time about 1985 to 1990 was super hard for me because it was not about being authentic. In fact, you were told not to be authentic.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, you're an entertainer, so be an entertainer. We don't care what you are really. You know, that was the message.
Okay.
And it's very low. Women were very low on the totem pole when it comes to their importance to society.
Yeah. I mean, that pressure that you described, it still exists because, I mean, people now have to be on social media as an artist. They have to perform on TikTok, or their label says, if you don't make a cool viral TikTok video, we're not going to release your album, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And then you have all these people commenting on your looks on Instagram, which is really personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So things haven't changed that much, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, it's in the States, it's being pushed really hard. The whole idea of women being able to, well, everyone, but now we're talking about women. So the idea of women being pushed to fit into this tiny little box of acceptability that's hypersexualized and stuff.
Yeah.
Way more important than actually what they can do.
Yes.
What's between their ears, you know?
Completely. And it's really difficult when you're a young artist to say, no, this is not what I am. Because like with Billie Eilish, for instance, that was not what she was. And she said, okay, I'm not going to be that. But she had like parents who guided her really well. So she had that confidence. But a lot of young girls would just, say, okay, fine, I'll do what the record, what management tells me to do.
Yeah, I think she's a fine example of somebody who really has guts. I mean, she's brave and she is willful and she just does it.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take.
I mean, see how incredibly successful she is.
Yeah.
And how she's like a role model for all these young girls. At some stage, you decided, okay, I need to sort of move away from this crazy industry, and you moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
And you lived on the Capitol Hills?
Yes, yeah.
And I love the story about the way you had like an open house if I got this right, and like bands would come and hang out in your place. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
the house that I had in Seattle was centrally located. Most of the grunge, so-called grunge scene was sort of around Capitol Hill, and so I had a big house, and my kids
Lucky you.
Yeah, my kids were grown and gone. So yeah, and a pool. So they would all come over after a show, and in Seattle in those years, the music scene was really tight knit, and the community, there was no competition between people. They were friends, and they jammed with each other and got up on each other's stages, and they liked to hang out after shows together. So my house was a natural. Yes. And there was one big room that was all carpeted with a fireplace in it. And so I took all the furniture out, and they would just go in there and sit around on the carpet against the walls and drink their beer and hang out together. And sometimes it was really necessary because a lot of people in that scene did not survive. I mean, there were a lot of drug ODs and stuff. So every time somebody died, there'd be a get together and almost like they'd sit Shiva. And it was really healthy for them because the grunge scene was comprised mostly of young men who didn't understand what the record industry was really about. They just knew that they were being
lured in.
Yeah, and because they were grunge and wore plaid shirts and all that kind of stuff from those days, they were just being signed like that. And they loved the idea of being signed, but they didn't really get what it was going to be like. And so they were bluesed out about that, you know.
Yeah.
So they had a lot to sit on the carpet and talk about.
Yeah, and with bands like Soundgarden and Mudhoney, I think that hang out at your place. Because I was reading,
Alice in Chains.
Yeah, because I was reading the Dave Grohl biography, or well, his own autobiography, and he was talking about Kurt Cobain, and it's exactly what you're describing. That all of a sudden they're really successful, and they have to get to grips with the fact that there's this industry, or somebody's saying you have to be there, you have to be there, you have to release an album, and all this pressure. And I mean, like, the whole reason why he's making that music is because he doesn't really function like that.
Right.
So so that must be really hard if you have this success, but you're like torn inside. And then you sort of decided, okay, I don't want to perform in big arenas. I want to sort of downsize it a bit because why did you decide that? Yeah,
I think that both my sister and I felt by the end of the 80s that we needed to blow off steam. It was an incredible pose to hold for 6 years. And so when it was over, we both just wanted to go back to Seattle and just be family people. And we got a little side project called the Love Mongers going together, which was just a vocal band. And we, played a bunch of gigs, went on tour a couple of times, made an album and everything. Of course, not commercially successful because it was just way too alternative. But
that wasn't what it was about anyway.
No, it was not. And it served the purpose to really help us relax. And come back to ourselves and be real and just be who we really are.
And talking of relaxing, I heard that you, I think in 2013, you decided to get into meditation.
Yes, yeah.
Do you still practice meditation? And what did it change for you?
It was 2012, and I did because I found myself getting stressed out again, just over little things, and it was turning me into a really nervous person. So I decided to try techniques like that, and I learned how to meditate and started doing it, and it really took a gigantic load off just to quiet the mind, I think we've all got monkeys running around upside in our brains, and it just calmed down the monkeys, made them all just chill. It's hard to be still at first, but when you do find that place where you can be still, it's remarkable and just so freeing. You can take a big breath,
I mean, that's a big issue anyway for artists or anybody in the entertainment industry, mental health. Right. So I think it's more and more important that people sort of think, okay, this is all a crazy industry, maybe I should get into meditation or whatever, because they can't cope with all of it anymore.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And meditation techniques can be used anywhere, anytime. So you don't have to swallow a pill or take a drink or something because it's right there with you always. So.
A lot of people are like astounded by the fact that your voice is as magical as it was a long time ago. But what I find interesting, I think you said this, the only thing you do is you take arnica, which is...
Yeah. And I didn't discover arnica until just like last year.
Really?
All these many decades of singing and dealing with being hoarse and everything. And then I finally just stumbled onto it because I knew that arnica in small quantities takes down swelling and bruising. So I started taking it in mega doses, and it did the same thing for my throat. So
wow,
that really helps me.
Yeah, maybe we should promote arnica a bit more because I mean, especially in metal, there's a lot of screaming going on.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just got to say that it's really important. Like nothing is a silver bullet.
Yeah.
You have to sing correctly, and if you go around screaming, it's just skin. You're going to wear your throat out. But if you sing correctly and take some arnica and drink a lot of water, I think that's a good plan. And
you always warm your voice before you go on stage for an hour and you sing songs, don't you? So what are the last things you were singing along to?
The last couple of songs I've been warming up to are, I've been singing along with U2, Joshua Tree album, and with Emmylou Harris to a Wrecking Ball album. Oh. And if I sing along with both those albums, I'm warmed up.
And is there any metal bands that you're into?
Lizzie Hale. I think they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then what I heard was you decided at some stage during the pandemic you're going nuts. You want to go on a road trip.
Yeah, we did. My husband and I were locked in the house for a year, and we decided we couldn't take any more. And so we got vaccinated, put on masks, and we leased a tour bus and drove off from our home in Florida all the way to the West Coast and went to see people in Seattle and did some recording up there, and went to LA and San Francisco. We came back, we went to all the national parks.
Wow.
And there was nobody there because it was the pandemic.
Good timing.
So it was incredible. Just to see the country at rest, without a bunch of people. It was amazing.
And was that also an inspiration for your new album?
Yeah, that was part of it. Yeah, some of the songs that I wrote on that trip, like Black Wing, for instance, and As the World Turns, I think, written on that trip.
And how did you choose the covers? Because I love Missionary Man, for instance. How did you choose the songs?
Well, Missionary Man, like I always loved the
Eurythmics.
It's like, how can you beat it? You can't,
no.
But
well, you can.
Well,
Annie Lennox would agree on that.
Well, I just did it different, because in the States right now, there's this huge split in the country, left wing and right wing, and the right wing is pretty much, evangelistic Christians and big mega churches and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was the perfect time to take Missionary Man and, and make it into a great big mega church production. We got a Southern Baptist gospel choir on it and everything.
Amazing.
Just made it huge.
And talking of which, how do you feel about Roe versus Wade? I mean, things like that happening in your country.
It's insane because the majority of the people in the States are pro-abortion. It's just how it has to be. It doesn't matter what somebody else's religion says.
Exactly.
I think it's like 78% of the people are pro-choice,
Yeah.
And when you come down to it, it really isn't anybody else's business except the woman herself, what she's going to do with her body.
Completely, 100%.
So it's super controversial. And I'm not anti-male or by a long stretch. I'm married to a man, and I dig him,
Yeah.
But
shout out to wherever maybe he's somewhere in the audience.
But I find that most of the people who are pushing, anti-choice are men, old white men.
Old white men.
Yep.
The big problem of the world.
Right. So it's super controversial.
Yeah. And just let me get to, because you're going on tour and you have this fantastic band. Can you just finally tell me a bit about how you got this band together? Yeah.
I had written a bunch of songs. I think I had 6 demos. They're just like little iPhone demos, from home. And I had always wanted to go work at Muscle Shoals Fame Studio. as a bucket list thing. And so I decided to go do that. And my friend Vince Gill turned me on to Tom Bukovac, who is my guitar player now, and said, this guy rules, you know. He can play anything. He's a great director for your band. So I got in touch with Tom. I asked Tom to bring musicians along to the sessions. And sure enough, we started working on these demos. And they really, well, first of all, we really hit it off. I mean, this rare thing happened where, like, we liked each other, our senses of humor meshed.
Difficult. That's not easy to find.
It's very important.
Yeah.
The hang is very important.
Completely.
Yeah. And then they had great ideas for the demos, and we just worked as a team. It just fell into place. So we liked each other so much that I asked them if they wanted to come out on the road, and they did. So my husband calls them the Amazing Dogs.
Yeah.
And it stuck. So,
Yeah. So that's the name of the band.
Yeah.
And I think you're going on tour. You'll be with ZZ Top, for instance. But are you coming to Europe as well, or?
Well, I hope so. I mean, this is
So
our
do I.
first. Yeah, I'm here. But this is our first foray into Europe as a band. This band.
Okay.
But I'm hoping for much more.
Well, so are we. Would you all like to see the band here in Europe, in Germany, perform? Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
for
you
your time. It was lovely talking to you. And
Yeah,
I'm definitely coming tomorrow. I'm going to rock.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.